somebody who will have plenty to say about what happened on Tuesday afternoon, but also has had plenty to say also about those who get in the way, particularly of mining and of economic development in this country, is the Minister of Resources, Shane Jones. And Shane joins us now. Shane, welcome to the show. Love to have you on.
Yeah, no, great. Greetings, platform clan.
Yes, thank you. Well, there you are. You're a bit of a favourite, I have to say, of our listenership. Shane, can I ask, first of all, are you happy with where you ended up on Tuesday afternoon, or do you think they could have gone a bit further?
Well, New Zealand First as a party had a remit, and it went further than where the cabinet went. Obviously, we are unfettered as a party when we discuss these matters in our public conference, and it's all very public.
Yeah.
But, as well as I do, there's three parts to our coalition, and once something's gone through cabinet. But I am very keen to ensure that whatever we do, it gets something akin to an electoral mandate, because I go back to the days when Brian Elwood was running the Local Government Commission, and Bassett was the Minister of Local Government, and Geoffrey Palmer was shepherding through the various RMA changes, and Helen Clark was the Dock Minister. So I was a bright young thing before I buggered off over there to America to do my degree with 4 kids and my wife in tow. So my real motivation, Michael, is partly structure, but I genuinely believe, mate, that New Zealand is at a tipping point. And I know that things might improve as the banks loosen up the purse strings and people derive more optimism, but we've got a mindset problem, as you well know about, number one. Number two, the mindset has penetrated the deep recesses of regional and local government. So it's very difficult ever to find any man or woman who quickly agrees over the phone, because they don't talk on the phone anymore, that they'll solve the problem through common sense. And I have my severe doubts that unless you change that culture, then just sort of changing structure is going to root out those problems.
No, listen, I share your views 100%, Shane. That's my concern about the announcement on Tuesday afternoon too, that the people who you talk about will still be there, and you're just changing who has some sort of oversight of them at the end of the day. We need to go much further.
Yeah, I mean, one way possibly is to reduce their role in statute. So unless it's a particularly egregious issue, no staff member or indeed no councillor need interfere with the lawful business of a firm. And we have created a set of obstacles that it only needs the mildest of backfire air, and then the system swings into motion. Like, I was very disappointed that the regional council, over a spill at the mussel factory up in Apotiki, apparently they felt it was a criminal matter. And look, you have spills on a regular basis, and I don't know of any business, that serious professional business, that goes out of its way to deliberately do a spill. And I just sort of feel that, we need a lot more discretion and pragmatism. Now, you're always going to have egregious cases by some sort of character up there in the Waikato who put a whole lot of pig swill. Yeah, pig swill.
Yeah.
You can always have those cases. But don't catastrophize the existence of one egg to imagine that all the clutch of eggs are addled.
Listen, you've been very critical of the Otago Regional Council to do with mining, and so let's go to the mining issue soon. Do you, and that was to do with Oceania Gold. Can I just ask, the Oceania Gold was seeking to expose their gold mining operations for an existing site, and there's literally thousands of jobs, I think, throughout the country that are dependent upon their mining operation there. You had to go at the Otago Regional Council. Was it their problem, or was it the Department of Conservation that was stopping?
Oh, it was a mix and mingle. You know as well as I do that the regional councils really struggle to make decisions for fear of offending Ngāi Tahu or some other NGO, and then they'll be hauled off to the Environment Court. So there was that particular issue, and thankfully the councillors at that particular subnational body seemed to have prevailed on their officials to not notify what was a bog standard application. DOC proved to be a bigger problem, and look at a deeper level. New Zealand First is going to fight at the next election that DOC should be broken up. This is another remit that went through our party. Nothing has been done to DOC in a fundamental way since it was formed in 1987. It ended up with a lot of land that's stewardship land. It's not DOC land. And the officials in DOC, I mean, in many cases I meet them, they're God-fearing, committed people to wildlife management and better conservation outcomes. But nigh on 38% of the landscape, mate, falls under some sort of DOC mandate or under whatever DOSLI's called now. So it's overdue, and it'll be 40 years since 1987 by the time we win the next election and get cracking in our second term.
No, listen, I share your sentiments, but also the mindset of local government and central government. You've identified, you're not wrong about that either. Until we root out that mindset, we're not going to get the change that you need. Can I ask on mining in particular? New Zealand has a wonderful future mining if we do it properly. You've identified that. You've been the champion of mining. It seems, forgive me, Shane, to think that New Zealanders, or at least certain pieces of bureaucrats within both local and central, mostly both actually, and their periphery, regard mining as evil, full stop. Doesn't matter what it is. Is that your perception too?
I agree. I thoroughly agree, mate. I've been astounded by how deeply embedded this negative culture has been. Now, I don't know whether it started in Helen Clark's time, Michael, but I mean, here's the hypocrisy. Every time I move around rural New Zealand, I meet young men and women who are on a fly-in, fly-out to Australia. And do you know what they say to me? Why is it that your government doesn't create opportunities like this for us at home? The West Coast and Southland, Michael,
Yep.
geologically is remarkably similar to the New South Wales. And in some geologic ancient time, it was all part of the New South Wales. So it's, look, I'm not bemoaning the fact that I get socked in the chops. This is what I get up to do every morning, and I'm not going to stop. I do feel, however, that now that our government has signed the international agreement with fellow-minded nations over resilience and collaboration for critical minerals, then I'm able to put to Kiwis, right, you want our sovereignty, you want our resilience, you want our independence firmed up and strengthened, well then you've got to back us to use our own resources, or we are going to continue to depend on nations that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart. Now, Indonesia went through a recent phase, just overnight closing down a whole bunch of mining operations, partly because of guardrails, but also they're looking after their own resilience. Now, how come these other bigger nations are able to do that, but we're stuck in this Calvinistic belief that somehow we're a cork floating on a bloody ocean of instability, geopolitically speaking, but it'll all come right in the end? What a joke.
Okay, so you are finding, I would imagine you've got considerable sympathy for your viewpoint, obviously, from both National and ACT. Is there any prospect of Labour having a closer view to yours, Shane, or is that because at the end of the day, the continued assurance that corporations are looking for, particularly multinational ones coming to this country, is that whatever the change of government, the consents that they get will continue. Now, the Greens are promising that they will avoid All consents for coal, hard rock, gold, and seedbed mining if they are elected or part of a future centre-left coalition government. Your response to that?
Well, Labor will never change for as long as Megan Woods is in control of natural resources and mining. Although she privatised a valuable asset in the Callaghan Institute and it's now been taken over by an Australian company who basically bought it for 3 cents a jack, and that particular woman closed down the refinery, nothing will ever change in Labor for as long as she is where she is. So let's get that right.
Okay.
She is stronger than the leader, and she is stronger than the Maori caucus, and she's stronger than any other backbench cluster. So have no doubts about that. I see it in the House on a regular basis. So I do feel there will be new MPs coming in who will realise that there can be no future in New Zealand without an energy plan that includes us using our own minerals. On the Greens, look, I've been on record. I described them as treasonous. I've described them as looking at mining through the green eye of Sauron. I described them as sort of demonic egg beaters. I got in the crap for using that term recently on Radio New Zealand, but I'm a politician.
Yeah.
Politicians have the ability to deploy rhetoric and hyperbole in a contest of ideas. How come the Greens can say the most extraordinary things, the Maori Party can say the most vile things about Māori blood, that Winston and I, that ours is too weak to be of any use to the Māori people and that we're Uncle Toms? They can get away with this. The mainstream media just tut-tut. The moment that I line them up and deliver some return fire, Radio New Zealand goes into a meltdown. What a joke.
No, listen, I found that extraordinary that you used. Listen, I'll just explain because not everybody would have caught up with this one, Shane. But in an interview, you used the word description of those who come from an environmental background getting in the way of economic growth. You said that they were using a demonic egg beater, which is a sort of colourful turn of phrase. And somehow that ended up offending the host of Radio New Zealand who was interviewing you, who decided that you needed to be chastised on air for the rhetoric that you just employed. I mean, from our state broadcaster, really?
Yeah, I thought that was a low ebb. I just wondered whether or not they'd run out of sort of genuine content, so they were falling back on being the language police. I knew at that point in time I'd won the policy and political debate. The reality is the
Yes.
Green Party are planning to expropriate legally gained statutory rights. Okay? They're going to do it to New Zealanders. They're going to do it to foreigners. It's what happens in Venezuela. It's what happened in Zimbabwe. It's what happens in third world countries. We have no business acquiescing with that, or we will lose our status as a dependable OECD modern democratic nation. Now, look, not everything that we do finds great favour. I mean, I'm always in the news for colourful reasons about fisheries, and there was a protest by some social influencers recently over the Harbour Bridge. A whole lot of guys and girls, they turned up in four-wheel drives and their outboard motors and their runabouts and their $1 million boats, protesting against me over the introduction of some highly protected areas in the Hauraki Gulf. What's bizarre about that, the only party who had nothing to do with these new reserves in the Hauraki Gulf was New Zealand First. We weren't even in politics when Labor introduced it. But facts and mythology and misinformation takes root. And it just shows that there's a lot of keyboard spite where I'm concerned, because we are trying to do things that are a major departure. And of course, many of the protesters who turned up at the Auckland Harbour Bridge have a hateful relationship towards the commercial fisheries sector. Well, sorry, there's a lot of Kiwis, God-fearing families who are eking out an existence, catching fish, crewing vessels, and I've got every right to challenge the people whose outboards should have been motoring under the bridge, not over the bridge. And they just seem to think by sending all sorts of vile messages against the commercial fishing industry and my good self that somehow they're going to beat me out of shape. It's not how democracy works. Now, of
So
course,
let me
I
get
had a
this right.
better
The
meeting.
the Hauraki Gulf, it has certain protected areas that were introduced by a previous government.
Indeed.
Um,
And then
and
what happened was that the National and the ACT Party, they came to us to vote for the passage. I grandfathered the rights of 6 modest mullet and trevally fishermen for 3 years so they could continue to fish in 2 of those areas for 3 months a year during winter and sell that protein into South Auckland for the working class families, largely Polynesian and Māori, who use that fish. And that turned into some catastrophic grievance in the minds of these recreational social influences that somehow the Hauraki Gulf had been handed over to commercial fishing.
mm,
So grossly incorrect, very
mm,
difficult. But I did have a good meeting, mate, with the chairman of the sports fishing clubs, and they're concerned about the future of the marlin fishery. You may remember
yes,
that
yeah,
Labour character called Colin Moyle, when you and I were both younger. He did a deal that the marlin fishery would remain a key sports fishery and a recreational fishery. And when we're exploring whether or not should the commercial sector who catches these things incidentally be enabled to bring them back to shore as opposed to just letting them go in the sea, which is what they're expected to do now. So we initiated some consultation, and then the red flag went up with them. But I have to say, they've got a brilliant young chairman, Andrew Johnson, who's got a great future ahead of him. He's actually dredging the Wanganui River today, and I'm going to work with him and the Sports Fishing Council. But all these social influencers who have as their agenda the destruction of New Zealand first, they've met their match in me.
all right. Thank you for that, Shane. Nice to talk to you. Have a great week. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye bye. Shane Jones is also the Minister of Oceans and Fisheries, as you've probably just worked out, as well as the Minister of Resources. He ain't taken any. Yeah. Listen, directness. That's all you want. Isn't it? You want to know where people are coming from, where they're heading, travel, and then you work it all out. What you don't want is equivocation. So I suppose in some ways, Shane Jones and the Greens, at least, you know where they're coming from.